I want to just do a quick book review on Chris Hedges' book from 2006 called American Fascists. Um, I love Chris Hedges. Uh, I think he's always got some good insight into the US. This was not a particularly great book. It felt disorganized. Um, it didn't feel like he was building up to a point. It's just random uh, stories, anecdotes, um, insights into the evangelical movement within the US. I do think that the Christian right, Christian fascism, is one of the most dangerous movements in the US right now, if not the most dangerous. I would love to find a better book um, that analyzes this. He goes into the history a little bit, although I really think that could have been covered much more, understanding how it arose from the moral majority, um, your Falwell and Robertson um, in the 70s and 80s, going back further, um, talking more about the John Birch Society, going back further, talking about Father McLaughlin in the teens and the 20s of the 20th century. This seems to be a style of Chris from the books that I've read so far. A bit disorganized, just kind of grabbing anecdotes here and there. It's interesting. It's always a good read. I think he has good insights. Um, if you want to understand the evangelical world better, just kind of hear inside stories from people who have left, from just a reporter's point of view. It's really interesting. You find out how many hundreds of millions of dollars these people make. But it's not, it, I don't really think there's anything here that you're not going to find in other, probably better books. Chris's books are always fun to read because he foreshadows a lot of what we have seen under Trump. Um, it was interesting, though not at all surprising, to see how evangelicals became some of Trump's biggest supporters. Um, of course, conveniently ignoring the fact that he was an adulterer, uh, a rapist, a really just disgusting creature. That's never stopped him. In fact, many of these preachers emulate him in many ways. One thing he did mention I found very interesting and I'd like to read a little bit more about is um, Christian soldiers who went to Iraq and in their mind or they verbalized that they were fighting a crusade, a holy war. Bush famously said a few days after 9/11 that this is a crusade, and the White House rapidly tried to walk that back because it echoed the crusades of the 11th and 12th century, where the Christian West invaded Muslim East in a holy war and committed atrocities, etc., which is really what we did as well in the past 20 years. But I wonder how often that happened in Iraq and Afghanistan. be really fascinating to learn about. I think this is a pretty good summation here. On the one hand, Hedges' work is quite elucidating, quite erudite. He did his homework. He always does. To his subject matter and treatment are needful, even today in 2019. The problem is American fascists is quite the sophomoric rant. Well said. Gets tedious after a while. Very well said. Even when you agree with Hedges' polemic otherwise. My guess is that he's just too emotionally invested in the material to distance himself from all professional treatise, and that hurts his effort. I think that's fair. It's really interesting at the end. So Chris attended, I believe he was Presbyterian minister. He attended Harvard Divinity School, and he talks about his professor there, who obviously had a huge impact on him. And I think this professor had lived in Germany prior to World War II and had spoken out against the Nazis, had been forced to leave. And he warned that America is ripe for Christian fascism to arise, and that the Christian church had a large role in Germany of supporting and growing Nazism. And this is something I've heard from and read from a number of authors, these psychologists who interviewed the Nazis in Nuremberg, famously said that the U.S. is the country most likely for that type of political environment to arise. Anyway, this is, I think, a good type of book to just blow through quickly on a fast audiobook. Don't get bogged down in it, but if it's a subject you enjoy, it's worth checking out.